In this final chapter, we hear how Harrie Vernette Rhodes came to write several books with a little help from her friends. And then she closes with some beautiful insights that are still important today, some 70 years after she wrote them. Chapter 9, New Gifts. For a long time, it seemed to me that the gift of healing used my abilities completely, but one day my father told me that I was mistaken. He said, "It is a great satisfaction to bring harmony to a sick body and to cure it of its ills, but it is a still deeper satisfaction to bring harmony to a sick soul and help it get in tune with God, who is love." He then went on to say that if I kept an open channel, other kinds of help could also come through, and that I might be able to express in prose and poetry and in music at times bits of inspiration which would help people along their path. In July of 1911, I began to hear poetry in the air. I recall a soft pink light seemed to surround me, and a vibrant feeling possessed me, as though an angel were near. In the next month, I wrote 32 poems. Up to that time, I had never written a single line of poetry, and I knew nothing of the rules of composition. Most of the verses which come to me are of the homely, simple type, sometimes like a hymn. It is significant, perhaps, that the form of these poems is like the poetry of my childhood, with a strong influence of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and John Greenleaf Whittier, although I am sure that the body of my poetry would not compare with the body of theirs. The fact that I can write poetry at all seems amazing enough to me because I had no training in that line. Personally, I feel that the verses are given to me through clairaudience. Certainly, words are given to me which I have no memory of ever having heard. I well remember when I was informed in poetry that a polyglot would be given to me. I hurried to the dictionary to find out what kind of visitation a polyglot might be. Okay, since my great-grandmother did not include the definition of polyglot, I had to go look it up myself. And it means a specialist in language or someone who speaks more than one language. While at the dictionary, I will define a word, mammon, that you will hear in a moment. It means a desire for profit or the concept of wealth, which is personified as an evil spirit. Okay. Poems come to me in all sorts of places: on a streetcar, while working in my kitchen, while healing patients, or out in the garden when I do errands. Not so long ago, I stepped into a cemetery to find some shade and rest for a few minutes, and these verses came to me in about a quarter of an hour. God's work goes on in spite of war and famine, of dreaded pestilence or baneful blight, in spite of all the selfish greed of mammon that toils amid the shadows of the night, in spite of evil hearts and hands essaying to crush the temple that we build upon. A law and order, all divine obeying. Unmoved by man's device, God's work goes on. Not always in radiance or splendor or brilliant dazzling of the noonday sun, but in an atmosphere serene and tender. His mightiest miracles are daily done. And though short-sighted, vision-lacking mortals themselves against his majesty array, nor give him entrance through the heart's closed portals, God's work goes on and will not brook delay. No human power can interrupt its mission, as well attempt the planets to remove, or change a single star from its position it holds amid the galaxy above. And so, when all our plans seem unavailing, when busy hands and throbbing hearts are stilled, doubt not, but rest assured with the faith unfailing that if our plans are his, they are fulfilled. Sometimes a figure appears to me chanting a psalm, or I may hear a psalm and feel myself gathered into a stream of praise. Music comes just as unexpectedly as poetry. My notebooks are filled with entries. On September 4th, 1920, at a friend's house, I was playing her piano and I heard a voice say, We have your book, Songs of Gladness, ready if you will allow us the time to give it to you. In a few minutes, I began to hear music, which I played on the piano and then wrote down. When the music was written, I heard the words. Sometimes I heard one voice, and at other times there were several voices singing. Part of the time, I was told what chord to strike, and then my hands played the song 3 times, after which then I wrote it down. In 2 months, I had written 50 songs, which I was told to have published. The musician showed me in a vision the book cover, which was a robin's egg blue. Printed on the front was a picture of a brown robin. When I asked why a robin was chosen, I was told, "There are many beautiful songsters in the world, but none brings more joy than the robin. He is spring's forerunner and nature's optimist." I was told that there had been a conference on the other plane, and contributions of happy songs had been called for to be given to me in this fashion. Sometime after the book was published, I happened to be attending a meeting in Chicago when a stranger came up to me and said that she was from New York, and that a few days before she left home, a Miss Lily, who had been a mutual acquaintance of ours before her death, had come to her and told her that she, Miss Lily, had given me a song that was called Our Shepherd for a book that I had just published. She said that she had titled her song Our Shepherd because her own name had been Shepherd. We turned to the book, and there was the song on page 40, signed Mrs. R. Shepherd, Lily. Certainly, I had never known Mrs. Lily's name had been Shepherd before her marriage. I had seen her only once at a meeting in Minneapolis for which I had played the organ before she had given the presentation that evening. Another of the songs for that unusual book was contributed by a man who gave his name as Dr. James Gates Percival. He had appeared to me a number of times before he had ever given me his name. Then one evening he came to me and told me his name, telling me that if I would go to the library, I could find a volume of his poems, in which there was a sketch of his life and his photograph. Be assured that I was there when the library opened the next morning. I found the volume of poems, and his photograph looked just as he appeared to me. A few days later, I sat on the streetcar. I glanced up, and I saw a man in a gray suit standing beside me. I did not look at his face, but I just moved over to make room for him to sit down. He leaned over and said, "I'm going to give you a song that will make a hit." In my surprise that he should speak to me, I looked up to see who it was, and no one was visible. It came to me that he was Dr. Percival. He gave me some verses, then instructed me to write a given letter beneath each word. When the dictation was finished, he told me to try the song on the piano when I got home. I found that the letters written under the words were the notes of a catchy melody which fitted them perfectly. He titled the song, "I'm Calling on the Mental Telephone." Because of all this previous acquaintance, I was glad to see Dr. Percival's name among those who contributed to the Friars' music collection. Evidently, there is a limit in me beyond which even the most skillful friends on the other planes cannot go, because although I frequently hear orchestral music, no one has attempted to teach me to put it down on paper. I have received many short works, such as what we used to call pieces for the piano, some airs for the violin, a great many things for the organ, and many songs. The best works given me for the organ were never written because they came to me inspirationally while I was playing at church. Sometimes others than myself have seen the friar standing next to me as I played, or have seen other figures, or even heard voices augmenting our singing. I once recall playing on a very ordinary organ for a weekend church meeting. There was a sizable group present. The meeting was over as I began to play, but nobody left. The music which flowed from that organ was tremendous. It was glorious beyond anything we had ever heard. I was lost in it. A part of it, as if I had been volatilized into sound. The audience did not stir for more than half an hour. Afterwards, a musician, a stranger to that group, came up and asked me where the organ pipes were hidden. She simply had not been able to locate them. Now, if you aren't familiar with church organs, the big churches all used to have pipe organs with these huge banks of metal pipes all around the walls that make amazing music that resonate with both the cathedral building and the congregation. Harrie points out that she was playing on a small, ordinary electric organ that carries a tune but is nothing like a pipe organ. So this attendee's comment were that the pipes must be hidden. It shows that everyone had heard something very special from the organ that night. Another time, the contents of a whole book was given to me in just a few days. When I saw what was happening, I asked for a stenographer to take down the words as I repeated them to her. This book was published as The Raft in 1929. The messages came from many different personalities, most of them unknown to me at the time, but were indeed real people when I resorted to the research to discover who they were. When William Lloyd Garrison, whose name was unknown to me, finished his remarks on modern slavery, I said to a friend who was present, "The speaker says his name is Lyle Gunnarsson." 3 times he corrected me, and each time his name sounded just the same to me. And finally he said, "If you would just go over to the index of your encyclopedia and run your finger down the G's, I will tell you when you reach my name." Finding the letter G, I began to slowly run my finger down the line. Soon he said, "Stop! That's my name." I said to those present, "He said his name is William Lloyd Garrison. Have you ever heard of him?" Someone remarked, "Well, no wonder he was talking about freedom and slavery. He was one of the great abolitionists." I felt that Mr. Garrison was testing me to see if I would accept his direction. Or was I testing him in offering him that fine print to read? When music comes to me, I sometimes think that I should give up all other forms of service and try to be a better channel for such beautiful harmony. Or when the poetry sweeps out of the air, I think that surely it would be well to keep this channel free at all times for this type of communication. But then my hands are upon an alien physical body, and I feel convinced that the most forthright service of all is the fundamental service of restoring health to a pain-racked body. The sum of the matter is that I, like everyone else, will just have to be used in whatever fashion seems indicated by the need at hand. Our Master answered every kind of need which came to him, physical and spiritual, and I am grateful that the pattern holds down to my level too. It is God's way for his children who grow in spiritual knowledge. For 40 years, prose messages of spiritual help have been coming my way. My notebooks are filled with them. Some are appropriate for a special need. Some are generally helpful, but not particularly memorable. And other communications have made a permanent place in my life, in the form of simple paragraphs or even a single sentence filled with great wisdom or insight. Nearly every day, the professor gives me some helpful word. I have a large notebook filled with words of encouragement, which I call whittlings from the professor's pencil. Here are some examples. Know that your body is what you make it by your realization. You must become conscious of its power and light as each atom responds to your thought and emotion. As you think, so you are. Okay, I had to pick that one apart a little bit. As you think, so you are, which is the professor saying that every one of your thoughts and your emotions influence your perceptions of life, and most importantly, it influences the actual functioning of your physical body. I personally have encountered information and research that confirms this statement. Back to the professor's wisdom. The things of today are seeds for tomorrow. Choose them well. The spoken words brings forth a crop of unexpected events tomorrow, not only in your own life, but in all those who hear you speak. Sometimes a word spoken before a child will change the direction of its life, and in the future years bring in an avalanche of results, good or bad. as was the word of long ago. Keep your words and even your innermost thoughts constructive. Let them be joyous and loving, for from these come the issues of life. Harrie adds a well-known quote, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer." Another quote, "Life changes its form in countless ways, in the different frequencies given it by the thought of man and God. The thought form makes of life what it wills to make, but it is always life, for there is no death, only a change of form." After that, he appeared in another form unto two of them as they walked and went into the country. This is a theme that has been repeated in many forms throughout this book, in most every chapter, that life is eternal, and our experience of this lifetime is guided in large part from our thoughts. Another quote, "Growing is not difficult, but the hurt of stretching is often hard to bear. Souls are thrown together in life so that they may learn the needed sympathy and love, so that with those who are born in the same family, they must learn to understand and to love each other." I want to summarize this mainly for myself. The professor says that all the hardships in life help us to grow so that we can stretch ourselves to learn the meaning of sympathy and of love. Harrie continues, "So perhaps the superabundance of these messages is only indicative of the largesse of God, who always sends more blessings on every hand than we can use." On July 6th of 1950, the professor gave me a glimpse of the future activities of mankind, closing with this paragraph, "Man shall look with the eyes of wisdom into the far distant skies and behold the illimitable spaces that are countless variations of vibrations, yet all a unit of the infinite power, the cosmic essence of God. Then man, looking into himself, shall find the epitome of all manifested life, built into a superstructure fitted for all degrees of activity, in his amazement finding that all the universe and all its contents, even man himself, is but a small creation, as a thought of God. And then he shall humble himself, filled with reverence and love, and gladly give himself, all that he is or can be, unto the Father God. Amen." This paragraph is dense with ideas, yet ties back to the messages from her father and others as they describe in the book the things that they have learned once they reach the afterlife. Our life on earth is but a small part of the bigger reality of all there is, and this is called God. Like with things I've read with newer ideas such as the electric universe theories or even physics such as string theory, Harrie has often described the bigger reality as one of vibrations, of harmony, and something more akin to music, at the root of reality, rather than our current obsession with just the material world, which is static, lifeless, and people study it as if it were a machine. She believes through the lessons from her teachers that what matters most is the wonder and the something that we can only call God's creation. On May 17th, in 1950, a message came which seems to sum up the heart of the revelations which have come to me. It must be realized that these are crucial times. Mankind is laying the foundations for future progress. The kingdom of God is to be founded upon earth, and old things will have passed away and must be replaced with new things. Spiritual unfoldment, pure and simple, is outside any religious form or curriculum. It is not bounded by the four walls of any creed. Spiritual unfoldment has to do with the spirit of man and his relationship to God. It carries the qualities of love and wisdom, which enfold all spiritual life. As drops of the ocean are always ocean water, so man, being God's child, is a part of God. Okay, wow. I just want to repeat that last line again. As drops of ocean are always ocean water, so man, being God's child, is a part of God. Okay, Harrie now is summarizing. With so much sound teaching poured in on me, I certainly do not have illusions of undue significance about my own life. But there are two conclusions that I do want to record. The first is that we could all profit enormously by trusting the promptings of the Holy Spirit, which comes to even the most obtuse of us. When we have an impulse to heal, let us heal, and let us encourage one another to develop and use these powers, which should be our natural endowment. On Sunday, we go to church and we listen to sermons about healing of that the man at the gate called beautiful. We tell our children about the feeding of the 5,000, about Paul's vision on the road to Damascus, and miracle above them all, about the raising of Jesus from the dead. We admit that such phenomenon might have happened 1900 years ago to these particularly and transcendentally good persons. Or maybe we just do not believe this sort of thing ever did occur. We say that those witnesses were unduly impressed by some perfectly natural happenings. We tell ourselves that when Jesus put clay on the eyes of a blind man and caused him to see, he actually used a portion of earth which had some unusual chemical properties. We say that the water was not literally turned into wine, but that the merrymakers at the wedding were having such a good time they couldn't tell the difference. We say, of course, Jesus did not rise from the dead, but that his disciples felt his presence through his absence. So great had been the imprint of his personality upon them, and in trying to express their ecstasy of devotion to his memory, this caused them to speak of him in the present tense, until from their vivid words the common people built a myth that he had risen from his tomb. Either way, disbelieving in those miraculous happenings of the Bible times, or believing that they occurred then but could not occur now in a scientific age, we need to open our minds and hearts to all possibilities of the enlarged consciousness. The religious way of life has not yet failed, but neither has it brought peace to the world, nor health, nor joy. Would it not be practical to encourage ourselves and one another to enlarge such gifts as we may possess? Would it make sense to be frankly and earnestly experimental, at least until we have a reasonable assurance in what is possible, and then to share and discuss our insights? My second conclusion is just a personal affirmation. I guess that when we seek, we surely find that when we knock, there is open to us such abundance of power that we have to tame our words when we try to tell about it, and hold back our very best experiences because they strain credulity. No one will believe us. I think this point is important, that people do not share some of their most important experiences for fear of how others will react. And by not sharing these experiences, no one hears about them. So each person keeps silent too. I personally have heard so many of these incredible stories. It seems that many people are anxious to share their weird experiences to people with open minds, and to ponder how these events could possibly fit into a model of reality simply because they happened. And they happen more frequently than anyone knows due to this culture of silence. We don't need to know all the answers, but we need to be able to be aware of our own experiences, listen with curiosity to others, and like with everything else, observe, and in our time, our lives will be enriched by it. Harrie closes the book by saying, "The bounties of the Lord, like his love, are past recounting, but still we cannot help recounting them for the simple joy of sharing what we have found." And she summed up my own thoughts on my personal journey through my family history in reading this book and the observations of my great-grandmother, Harrie Vernette Rhodes. I started this project as a gift for my 98-year-old mother, working from a copy of this book that had been highlighted by my grandmother, who was Harrie's daughter, Lillian Vernette Brown Miller. There was something special in that. And as I said at the outset, this book brought many questions, even to the people who had lived through these events real time, people who were healed by Harrie, yet never fully understand her beliefs, because Harrie rarely spoke of them. Spending so much time with the material, figuring out how to illustrate the points, and all this information has come alive for me. I have encountered other materials, authors, and teachers who tell the tale that Harrie's father used to tell her as a child about the blind men all trying to describe their own personal experience of an elephant. Each were true, but they were each very different. There is more, and people throughout time have always been driven to piece together all the varied experiences and observations. This job is not done yet. I think it is just the beginning in many ways. This is not something that will be solved by a machine that assimilated all of human knowledge, called AI or artificial intelligence. My guess is that at some future time, we each will cross over and discover the truths that each of Harrie's guides and teachers told her that are a part of a bigger truth, one that each person needs to discover for himself. Much like the ending of The Wizard of Oz, we all had the power to find our way if we could just discover how to use it.